All right, let's welcome Becky Center, the CEO of Indiegogo. Becky, I'm so honored to have you on stage. I admire what you're doing with Indiegogo. For the audience, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Indiegogo?
Of course, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored to be here at this amazing facility event and with all of you. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Becky Center. I am the CEO of Indiegogo. Indiegogo is on a mission to empower people to unite around the ideas that matter to them and together bring those ideas to life. Many folks here are doing just that, bringing their ideas to life, so I'm particularly excited to be with this audience. Indiegogo is an innovation company. We take innovative ideas across all different industries. It could be film, books, technology, tons and tons of different industries, and we allow people to crowdfund to basically raise funds for what they believe in by going out to the crowd. We have been around for about 15 years, and we have seen so many cool ideas, products, businesses come to life, roll through us, and we are thrilled to be a part of that journey.
That's so awesome. I'm so proud of what you're doing, and you're lowering barriers to entry for startups, and that's what we like to do here at mHUB. And capital is one of the hardest barriers, and you need capital to keep that engine running. That's so awesome.
Yeah, that was a big part of our founder's mission, and a big part of our mission today is that, traditionally finance was only accessible to maybe those who had relationships, those who had people in their network, or those who had a business or an idea that fit a very certain type of concept. And Indiegogo was really built around the idea that if you have an audience, the people can kind of vote with their dollars. If you get enough people to believe in you, we can break down those access barriers, and we're live. We've raised from every country and territory in the world, from all different walks of life, and we're really proud of that, and we're really excited to keep making it a little bit easier to do what is so very, very difficult to be an innovator.
I like what you said about voting with your dollars. Can you touch on that benefit? Because I think that's another benefit that people don't realize about Indiegogo. It's not just the capital that you're getting from a campaign, but you're really testing your market. Do you have any insights around that?
Yeah, so that's almost one of these really beautiful hidden benefits, which to your point, when you traditionally raise, you put a deck together and you have to convince one or two or three people that they like your idea. When you go to crowdfunding, it's almost really more of a pre-go-to-market. You are putting it out for the same audience that would eventually be your customer. And so because of that, you're getting a very different type of decision maker, and you're getting a very different type of insight in their response. A lot of times what we see is that when people do user studies or research, they have a certain hypothesis about what they think is going to work. But when they actually go to market and they hear from their audience, they learn something very different, and they're able to do that through crowdfunding. They're able to raise the money up front, take those learnings before they've invested very heavily in manufacturing, in all of these things that end up being quite expensive to change later. So just to give you an example, we have a campaign live on the site right now. They had two different options. I don't want to go into too much detail, but they basically had two different configuration options. One that would be kind of like something was to the side, and one where something would be to the center. And their research showed that probably there would be about 50-50 split interest. And so they put both of them out there. And in reality, 90% of the backers preferred one. And so they were able to learn that ahead of time. What they can do is decide really to only go and produce that one. They can make that choice, and they can save themselves a lot of cost later on because they learned that up front. Their backers kind of spoke to them, and they were able to get that product market fit data through their campaign.
That's great. I know your product helps startups a lot, and you've been immersed in the startup culture, at your career at Groupon. Can you talk about what attracts you to that startup life and what you like about it?
Yeah, I would say two things there. So one, the mission of Groupon, the mission of Indiegogo. I've really spent so much of my career now working on, small, medium businesses, local entrepreneurs, like individuals who are trying to do something that they're not yet at scale. They don't yet have the resources that very large corporations do have. And, what excites me about platforms and about like companies that can build technology to suit those individual smaller companies, people just getting started, is that, we can help provide resources, similar to you're able to provide resources and community to a larger group that might not be available if everyone were just going it alone. So the mission really speaks to me. What I love about startup life in particular is just the speed and the agility. We're able to move, very, very fast. We're able to try things and learn and change and optimize and see the output really quickly and see the impact. I love the people in the startup culture. I just love the energy, the creativity, the tenacity, and so so much of that really kind of speaks to me and motivates me. And we heard some people in the last talk talking about how like, just to jump to it, but like things get hard and you need your people around you, and so the people in the community just help keep everyone going and keep everyone better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Community is so powerful, especially here at mHUB as well. Can we rewind a little bit and talk about your career growth? You started as a data scientist, and then now you're CEO. Can you talk about that path? How did that happen?
So I have a really unique career path. A little background. I was a math major, maybe more specifically a statistics major. Don't ask me like any stats questions anymore. It feels far away, but it was deep math. And I went into business for a few years. I felt like I got almost an MBA on the job. Smaller entrepreneurial company, learned so much, and then I went to grad school in management science and engineering. So in the School of Engineering, again, a little more stats, a little bit of computer science and data. And I worked in deep data. My first job outside of grad school was in the business intelligence data warehouse team. And it was very technical. And what was really cool and interesting about being technical and being in that role is that through the data, I understood the business, a very large and complex business, very clearly, because it all came back to the data. And so in a role that might have felt, very technical, maybe it felt in some ways, less like commercial, I still had this like oversight and this involvement, and it led me to, kind of raise my hand and say, I think I could be a product manager. I'd like to like run a product. And, raised my hand and was given that opportunity. And then as a product manager, I said, like now I only have this like one bit, but I want to understand it all. And I ended up getting the opportunity to be chief of staff for the CEO, which was like, okay, now I'm in board meetings and speaking to investors and thinking about HR and comms and all sorts of other things. And that then led me to have this really sort of 360 view that led me to be a GM and eventually a CEO. So the path was very non-traditional. I really would say I just followed my interests. I kind of just like always did what interested me until I felt like I got it enough, and now I wanted to learn something else. So it's sort of a career of trying to constantly learn and grow and like end up in a spot where you're like, why did I do this? Why? I was comfortable before, but now I've taken on something harder and uncomfortable. And with each of those steps, like you realize that it's only hard and uncomfortable for, I don't know, 6-9 months or something, and then you'll get it eventually. And that's how we grow, and it's really, really satisfying. And that's kind of the path. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm assuming Indiegogo collects a lot of data and coming from a data science background, do you ever get that itch to dive deep into the data and improve operations and offer new features at Indiegogo?
I do. I'm like, get me in the SQL editor, and the team's like, get out of the SQL editor. But yeah, we're in the data, and it's we're a data-driven company, and I think for us, we are. Like I explained before, we get all of these learnings through behavior, and our the users of our site, they understand that intuitively, but it's our job and a priority over the next few year or two, however long, to really help them more. Help them understand that and make it even easier to kind of translate what we're seeing in the data to actionable insights and strategy. And that's something that we do now, but we are, really trying to build at more scale.
I'm curious as to what role, organizations like mHUB or incubators, what value do they provide for startups or, campaign builders?
Totally. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're a tech platform. We have great people. They will get on the phone with you. They will help you. But that's kind of we're limited in that. And so we love to partner with mHUB, with incubators, to help everyone who uses our platform, everyone who's really just in this space in general, use us or not, find their community. And what I love, and I always recommend doing these types of programs, being part of these communities, because first of all, you get access to events like this, and these are great. You learn from each other. You get that like camaraderie and the little like side hall conversations that you realize like, oh, okay, someone else has been there before. They've done this before. Maybe they can help me, and that helps level you up. So I think that kind of even an informal mentorship is super helpful. I think the diversity and inclusion piece also, like you look around this room and you're like, wow, these programs really facilitate bringing people together who might not have felt like this was for them, or they had that access, and they can look around and just inspired to look around the room today, and they can say, okay, I see people who are at least like me enough to know I can keep going, I can do this. I was never an athlete. I'm just not good at it. But what I do know about sports is that like it's a very mental game. It's physical, but it's mental, right? And business and your career and your company is also a mental game. And so much of it is you going home at night and making the decision to get up the next day and keep doing it. And so I can't understate the benefit of the community and of the motivation that helps you on your hard days.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I played tennis in high school, and it is such a mental game. You got to be focused, and you need to be athletic. Those are the two pieces.
Yeah.
So my next question, raising funding in manufacturing products is so challenging. So what are the biggest problems that you see, campaign builders face when they're trying to raise funds for Indiegogo?
I think the biggest challenge, maybe the most unexpected challenge for me coming in, is how much marketing and sales goes into fundraising. Whether you pursue fundraising of any avenue. Yes, you have to have a great product, but you do have to be able to tell your story, and you have to resonate with whoever that audience is. And we often look at a technical founder, and their product is their baby, and they understand ins and outs. But they also need to be able to kind of market it and think about that strategy. And so, a mistake that someone might make would be like, well, I'm going to put it out there in the world, and the customers will come. And there's a reason that there are these industries and professionals who do this. So I think putting in the business plan and the thought and how, I'm already assuming you have a great product, prototype, whatever, at this stage, but really planning it out before you're ready to go, and recognizing that planning cycle takes a long time. That can be months. And so, when you feel ready to raise, work backwards and start planning for it in advance. You can't, wake up one day and just put it out there and hope that the results will follow.
Do you have a sense of how many hours it takes to build a successful campaign, or how many people are using additional contractors, or what size of a team do people need to create
I don't think you need to hire a team. I think, everyone's in a different, I don't want to give individual advice here, but in general, let's say, you're a very small stage, and but at a minimum, I think you want to talk to somebody who can help you with the messaging, the way you say it, can help give you really great photos and great videos. So a few creative assets, and just like optimize the look of that. I think we love when people put themselves in their campaign. You are your product, and like part of crowdfunding is about the personal connection, and I think different people are more or less comfortable with getting up and even speaking or doing these things, but at some point, no matter what role you're in, you are also in sales, and at some point, like, you could get yourself a little comfortable and tell your story and tell it authentically and talk about why you had this idea, why you're passionate about it, what was hard about it. I think the really interesting thing for other people is to learn what was hard, and even if you're not someone who understands manufacturing deeply, you can appreciate a story about why the materials were difficult to come by, or why you couldn't quite get the angle right. There's like a million things that are hard that and you might forget they're interesting, but they're very interesting. So, just like, I don't think it's crazy amount. I don't, but that planning up front's important, and figuring out what you want to share and how.
I'm sure people are wondering what other secrets there are to running a successful campaign. Are there any other tidbits or advice that you can give?
I think I just gave quite a few of them. Again, the images, the photos, the story, an emotional connection. Who are you? And then planning up front. You're building your audience. So, at least for us, for crowdfunding, it tends to be like a B2C is what works best, because we're going out to individuals. So you want to understand like who that demographic is. So. Even a little bit of research on that. That's another thing that, like we talked about, like learning through the actual, transactional, or like similar, like we'll, help start putting things out there and saying like, oh, this is actually resonating with maybe a different age bracket than I expected, or maybe, like different profiles of ads are working. So that gets a little marketing heavy. But, for the most part, like a great product is gonna, be your strongest asset, and then it's really just like the positioning and planning for it.
Can you talk a little bit about how the crowdfunding industry is evolving, and where you see trends, and what does Indiegogo look like in 5 years from now, for example?
It's a very evolving market. We react to different, macroeconomic dynamics. When supply chains slowed down, we saw it. When different trends happen in consumer behavior, so like e-bikes, just crazy took off for us at some point, and in COVID we saw all the same things you would expect to see, which is people were doing a lot of outdoors stuff and camping and lifestyle. We have a really interesting thing that happened, maybe slightly less relevant to this crowd, but we started to see glamping campaigns coming across crowdfunding, which I think is super cool. Just same concept, but applied totally differently. Someone has a really audacious idea for a huge, like outdoor hotel site, and they have their plans and their permits, but they need the capital. And how did they decide to raise the capital? They basically said, if you back my campaign and after I build it, like you'll get 3 nights of a stay in the hotel. And so that's like a totally new thing that I don't think has been done before. And we've had, one big hit, and then the others kind of followed. So there's constant kind of trends that are happening. I'd say on a broader level, the way we see it is just basically more support for longer, more connection into the offline community. crowdfunding itself, one aspect of this journey, but, we are working with people oftentimes for so long beyond that, and so we'd like to be able to support, through that better.
Very cool. I've got 2 more questions, and then I'm going to let the audience ask some questions. So I'm curious, there's so many campaigns. I'm sure you have favorites. Can you talk a little bit about some of the hard tech campaigns or the physical product campaigns on Indiegogo?
Yes, I will. I will say a lot of times I get asked for favorites, and I go to like the heartthrob ones. So I think that there was like a crazy tidbit is that there was actually like a crowdfunded baby, meaning someone crowdfunded their IVF class early on, and that's super cool. And there's just been like a million really interesting. A million was a number, like a ton of really interesting like campaigns that have come through. I think on the very like deep tech, a cool one that I'm aware of is a technology that would create basically energy out of temperature change. I'm not a scientist in this area, but so they wanted to test this technology, and they had, I think, a lot of really bold ideas of how it might work, but they started with a watch, and it would be kind of like powered through temperature regulation on your skin, and then they were able to prove that out and maybe do other things. So like there's just wild stuff that someone's trying to build a museum. People are trying to make movies. We have a short Oscar winner in our history. Like all sorts of cool things.
That sounds awesome. I think the temperature one would be phenomenal if you wouldn't have to recharge your cell phone or your watch. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
So my last question before we give it to the audience is, what one piece of advice would you give to the audience about building a startup?
I think it is being really, really clear what you're trying to accomplish and why, and kind of setting your guiding. And write it down. Like, don't have it in the back of your head. Write a one. If you know me, you'll know I love a one-pager. But I'm big on it. Like, write it down. What are you trying to accomplish? What does that look like? And why? And the how, like, that comes later, and you'll hit a ton of stumbling blocks, and you'll have to change the how. But being really clear on what you're going for, and if that changes over time, that changes too. But I think it's just beyond helpful to have something when you feel the most clear-headed, that you've written it down in a month or 2 months or a year. You go back and you keep reading it. You say, am I making progress towards this? Is this still the right thing? Have I spent my time and energy moving this forward, or am I distracted by stuff that's less important? So I think being really clear on that, and then the people you surround yourself with to help make it happen.
This sounds like the start of a business plan when you start writing all those things down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hear from the audience. I'm sure you have some burning questions here. And can I get an extra mic, Max?
Hi, my name is Gulbano. I'm a student at DePaul University, and I'm so inspired by your story, and I would like to know, what is the motivation? What kept you driving? And I heard your success story. It was like a step-by-step, and I'm inspired, and I want to do the same thing in my future, looking towards it. And could you tell me what kept you driving? What was the motivation behind it? Thank you.
Sure. Small shout out to DePaul. I spent a semester there during Hurricane Katrina. They took us in, so thank you, DePaul. What keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? So I touched on this a little, but I was always very motivated by learning and personal development. And at some point, like just this sounds interesting, this sounds creative. Whatever it might be aligns with maybe my personal values and the type of people I want to work with. So I always kind of made decisions based on those factors, and admittedly less about a career ladder. It happened by accident. In some ways, by accident and through a lot of hard work is what I would say. but I really chose where I was going to be learning, where I was going to feel like I had an impact. And then as I grew in my career and became more of a manager leader, the ability to impact not just my own development, but my team's development is probably the most motivational for me. Especially like on the hard days, sometimes the call where I'm helping someone else is the thing that, makes me the happiest. And then when I look back over the span of time, like the ability to see people who, were all like, people who were in one spot and thought like I'm never gonna like ascend beyond this, and then had that encouragement and time spent with them, and now seeing like what they've done is probably the most gratifying. But those are the things that keep me motivated. I think everyone's motivation is really different, and it is helpful to know what yours is and try to surround yourself with it.
Any other questions? Alan?
Do you have a predictive engine where you've regressed the companies that you've looked at over all these years and seen what's worked and what hasn't worked? And is there, would you put a monetary value on that you could predict, what's gonna work in the future?
I'm gonna say yes and no. I think we have pretty good prediction of things like, hey, if you're, more or less in this type of category at this type of price range, and you've been able to find, this kind of like audience amount, you're gonna maybe, we can pretty decently predict like where you're gonna land, specifically on your campaign. Past that, or like the wild card in there is just people. And so, sometimes we're really surprised, and sometimes things take off that you would never have expected, and sometimes things go the other way and you wouldn't have expected it, and you saw everything look right. And that's actually the coolest part about it, is that you get that, you fail fast or not, like really early and pretty quickly. But like, sometimes we're really surprised. I think we have people who feel like they do have really good intuition, and then sometimes we're still really surprised.
All right, I saw a question over here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Britta with the German American Chamber of Commerce of the Midwest. Actually, two questions. One of them would be looking at the businesses that you support. Would you say that the crowdfunding model kind of helps more women be on your, is there more women on your platform? Do you think it's something that is more accessible maybe for a startup that is women-led? And then a second question would be, you were talking about that you also raise money globally, and just, coming from this German-American perspective, I was wondering if you see differences in how the marketing and the storytelling works, because from my experience, storytelling is something very American, whereas in Germany, we're like very data-driven, so we want to have a lot of facts, right? A lot of statistics, right? So two questions, I guess, the culture, and then also, but like for women, like the gender aspect, do you see, how does it work with the crowdfunding?
Yeah, we do see a slight bias towards women-run campaigns, and there's an article out there you could Google. I can find it and share it with the community. But they did an article a year or two ago that did show that campaigns where they were very like upfront and transparent about being women-led in crowdfunding in general, not just on our site, but tended to actually perform better. And I have some hypotheses about, why that might be, but I think it's pretty cool because that's pretty much not the case in any other, financing. And, another thing there that, we've had products that you just maybe women-specific products that, if you can just go straight to your audience and bypass the need for other people maybe to understand what they don't what doesn't relate to them, like that's super cool. The international part, I think that's probably true. There's definitely, different audiences react differently when you go global, but and also like there's practical things like, are you ready to ship, global internationally, or do you want to limit it to US? I think where it gets really interesting is, when someone's maybe a little more scaled, they start to say, hey, I've like cornered, this market, but now I want to expand into, sometimes it's I want to expand into the American market, I want to expand into the European or Asian market. So, different stages for different people.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. Let's give Becky a round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you all.
It's a pleasure.